Hey guys, welcome back. I thought I would start off this video, which is going to eventually be taking out Blood Raven, with a bit of review. So, if anyone's familiar with the mechanics of the game, just sit back and feel free to tune me out. But for those who are unfamiliar, I thought I'd just quickly go through the whole stats and skills system. Starting with the stats, I guess. So, 4 main stats. You get 5 points to put in each level. Strength, the primary point of it is to increase the physical melee damage, generally speaking, that you do. But really, it only increases the amount fairly marginally. There's a formula for it. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's something like only increasing by 1% or something, even less than that, I think, every time you put a point into strength. So that's really not what it's used. The main point of strength, no pun intended again, is that it has to do with your item requirements. So I don't know if I'll actually have any here. Yeah, sure. So this is not the biggest example, but for example, you see here requires 15 strength or 16. I remember people always having issues seeing 5s for 5s instead of 6s, even though there's a 6 right there. But that's beside the point. So the main use of strength is to make sure you can wear all your equipment. Now, as a Zealot Paladin, the main thing that's going to cost or have high strength requirements will be our armor. Usually one-handed weapons aren't super high. They're like medium, and shields usually aren't too bad. So it'll be the chest piece primarily that'll be the main strength requirement, which I believe the highest in normal is 100 for Gothic plate. No, ancient armor. And so that's the very highest, but you also get strength from some of your gear, which I have right here, for example. And also sometimes the equipment itself, either not necessarily giving strength, that doesn't help necessarily, but other pieces could, or the piece itself could have reduced requirements, which is one of the stats you can roll. So I'm not sure how high I'll need to go up. Usually having at least 70 is pretty good, because that'll get most of the sword and shield or whatever one-handed weapon I'm doing, and most of the equipment, and then we'll probably see from there how it goes. Dexterity increases the damage of stuff like bows for like an Amazon or something. It replaces strength in that regard. It also marginally increases your defense and increases your attack rating, which is your percentage chance to hit someone. So also don't take these values at face values here on the character screen, because the character sheet has a habit of lying. That's actually a term, lying character sheet, I believe. So I wouldn't take these all to be true. Like, we might not actually have a 95% chance to hit, so don't always assume this. But yeah, attack rating is one of the main things dexterity is for. It's actually quite a frustrating thing. If you don't have enough attack rating, you'll be missing like crazy, and it feels like you miss more often, even when you do have a good chance to hit. So that's one of the unfortunate things that if you're coming from, like, say, Diablo 3, where you never miss, essentially, unless you miss your skill shot, it might be frustrating to do physical-based characters in this game, because of the fact that you can just flat-out miss your swings. Like, I personally might prefer that the enemies have twice as much health, but instead of having a 50% chance to hit, I always hit. But that's kind of semantics. It's just a matter of, like, how does the game feel? But with a paladin, the primary thing dexterity is doing, and for any character who is focusing on their shield, is it affects your chance to block. There's a blocking formula, and there's a bunch of blocking calculators for people who don't want to do the math. I'll probably put a link in the description if anyone needs to access it. But the general gist is it's something like your total block is equal to your chance to block on your shield plus, I think it's plus, maybe it's times, and then it's like your dexterity minus 15, and all that's divided by your total character level. So the main modifiers are your total character level, which decreases your chance to block as you level, which is kind of counterintuitive in a way, but it's to mean that you need to keep putting dexterity into your, you need to keep leveling up dexterity as you level, which you get 5 points as you level, so it's meant to be an upkeep of sorts. The chance to block on the shield is the other variable. Now, as a paladin, we actually have the highest chance to block of all the classes. There's like the non-combat classes. They have the lowest. They have minus 5% chance to block, I believe. There's the more combat-ish focused classes, like your barbarians, for example. And then paladin sits alone at the top, so he has an extra 5% chance to block. Also, the fact that he has access to paladin-only shields means that he generally has higher chance to block base on his shield. And that also combines with Holy Shield, which just flat out is, among other things, it gives you a defense buff, faster block, and an increased chance to block overall. So generally speaking, paladins have the easiest way to get enough block. Blocking is maxed at 75%. That's the best you can get. So generally speaking, what you're doing with dexterity is getting enough dexterity and then keeping it up so that you can have 75% chance to block whenever, at all points. Of course, I don't have that right now because I just started out, but it's something to strive for. Generally speaking, you want to have like, assuming you can get 75% chance to block with Holy Shield and your shield itself, which isn't a super tall order, but I'm just speaking in approximations. You want about twice as much dexterity as you have levels near the end. More or less. Again, this isn't exact. I'm just trying to give a vague idea. So next is Vitality, which increases stamina, which isn't super relevant because you gain stamina every time you level. So usually stamina is something that like seems really important at the start, or it's limiting in that you can't run around forever, but near the end you're running forever, so it doesn't matter. Main thing it does is it increases your life, which, you know, is obviously important, especially important in hardcore because you don't want to die. So Vitality ends up being kind of the dump stat, as it were. So like once you set up these to be nice and pretty, to be exactly what your build needs, you just start funneling everything else into Vitality because everyone can use more life. Like even if you're a ranged character or you don't plan on getting hit, you're still going to get hit in this game. So essentially Vitality is the everything else stat usually. Next is Energy. Energy is kind of in a weird spot because the main thing it does is it increases your total mana, which for a lot of characters isn't super relevant because like life, like stamina and mana itself, you gain a bit more as you level. So, and not all classes are really mana intensive. So generally speaking, a lot of classes don't even need more mana. If they need more mana, what they usually do is they find a way to regenerate it faster, which usually either has to do with items or with, well, I guess in a paladin's case, meditation, but that's not always common. If for physical characters, it's usually through mana leech, as well as life leech is something else they want. But if you're finding yourself running low on mana, usually the solution is get a bit of mana leech. You'll never run out of mana. So generally speaking, energy's not leveled up very often on most character classes because usually it's something you can make up for in your gear. You either get more mana, mana regen, mana leech. Even arguably for mana intensive classes like sorceresses, you sometimes don't even want to put points into energy, which for a new player would seem super counterintuitive, because it's like, wait, no, I'm a spellcaster. I want to cast spells, so I put points in energy, right? And it's just one of those things that the more familiar with the game you get, the more you realize, like, oh, it's not as necessary as I would think. So that's it's an interesting thing. For me personally, on this character, I'm going to be putting no points in energy because Zealots are not particularly mana intensive. Like, they're one of the examples where if you're running low on mana, just get mana leech. Or I might start putting points into redemption later on, which is mainly used for recovering health, but it also gives you mana. So I'll talk more about the skills in a second. There's also down here, there's your resistances. These are all capped at 75. Generally speaking, there's ways to get around it, like for example, Paladins putting points into the resist spells actually increase your max resistance, which it doesn't tell you. It's kind of like a hidden effect, but I probably won't be worrying about that right now, just because as you go into higher difficulties, you start getting negative modifiers to these values. So it's not something that you can super easily just be like, oh yeah, max 75 in all of them. So usually, unless you're very well geared, which a self-found character is not going to be, increasing your maximum is not going to be super relevant. Of course, for the big end game characters, like, oh, I'm doing pandemonium and whatnot, pandemonium events and whatnot, or killing Ubers, whatever you want to refer to all the things as, that's super important. Then it's actually relevant to increase your max. But for this character, a self-found character who might not even go past normal, I'm not going to worry about those skills. But generally speaking, the higher the better. I think most people would argue this is almost in the order of importance. Poison's usually the least important, and then these are usually act dependent. Like certain acts to just generally have more of one element or the other. I would just these three in general is usually pretty important. Poison, kind of act 1, there's a lot of poison in Indariel as a act boss, but besides that, usually these more elemental ones are generally more important. Onto equipment, of which I have a very slim pickings. These are all the slots. You get jewelry slots, up to 2 rings, 1 amulet, helm, chest, belt, gloves, boots, and you get 2 sets of weapons, which also have their own setup when you select your skills. So if there's something you want to have, maybe an aura or something on a specific set of equipment, you can do that, or like a ranged weapon, melee weapon, which is useful maybe at the start, but later on you're not going to be able to keep up. So I'm not going to go through all the merits of all the equipment, just because generally speaking it's like get defense, there's going to be useful stats on items of different rarity. Some are socketed. I might go more in depth on equipment later, but for now, just know that it's usually a good way to get stats is to put it on your equipment. It's a way to assist this. Also, alternatively, it can increase skills, but that's a bit rare. I guess one other little thing is just that your belt usually dictates how much potions you can put on, or how many rows of potions you can put on. So like sashes and belts do 1, then there's like heavy belts, double belts, stuff like that, which keep increasing the amount of potions you can have, which is usually helpful in heavy combat situations, because you just don't want to keep having to reload potions over and over again. So I'm just going to do some really quick equipment stuff. I don't have that much money, so I'm not going to buy anything. I'm just going to let it all come naturally. Okay, so talking about skills. So I'm not going to go over all the Paladin skills, because Paladins are actually a pretty versatile class in that there's a lot of things that have merit. It's not like just, here's the only 5 skills that matter. So I'm going to focus more on what's relevant for Zealot, which is the build I'm going for. So here in defensive auras, here are the resist things that I mentioned, which actually increase your max resistances. Like I said, since this is a self-found character who might not go very far in the game, I'm not going to worry about leveling these up. Let's see. I guess I can start at the top. So Prayer is a health regen ability. I only have 1 point into it because I plan on going further down in the tree, so this is just a prerequisite. I might use it the odd time to heal up, but generally speaking, I'm not going to be using it. Here we have Defiance, which I might end up leveling because Defiance is actually a synergy skill, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But generally speaking, this increases your defense, which is always a good thing, but I probably won't be using the aura itself, but I might level up the skill. Cleansing is kind of an interesting skill in that it works like prayer. Because it has like a weird synergy with prayer itself. So you heal over time, but it also reduces negative effects on you, poison, curse, whatnot. So there might be the odd scenario where it makes sense to switch to it if I'm like trying to get rid of a curse or I'm heavily poisoned, something like that. But again, these are like more utility moves than like use this all the time. Speaking of utility, there's Vigor, which I also probably want to get 1 point into, which makes sense because I'm going down here anyways, but it's just flat out run faster, run longer. So that's usually useful because you do have to do a lot of traveling in this game. There is fast travel, but there's no mountain up. You have to run around yourself. So it generally just can be helpful to run that extra bit faster. Meditation is something I'm probably not going to pick up just because I'm not going to want to sit around recovering mana, and like I said, Mana Leech is going to be a main way to get mana back. Or alternatively, there is Redemption, which is something I know a lot of people like argue about whether or not to put it on a character like this. The general idea is there's corpses around you. You have a percentage chance every second, I think it is, or something like that, of redeeming the soul of it, and then you gain health and mana back. It's kind of a good recovery tool if you're like running around trying to dodge and heal up, but it's not super relevant if you're actually deep in the fight and trying to do as much damage as possible, because there's more offensive auras, which is the next panel, so we'll get into that. But generally speaking, I think I'm going to try it out. Maybe you don't put a ton of points into it. It's usually like 1 to 5, 1 to 10, something like that. But we'll see how it goes. There's Salvation, which is really good because it just is flat. Here's a shitload of resistances, which is really useful on certain boss fights because some bosses, like say Mephisto, are super not only multi-element but do a lot of elemental damage. So sometimes it can be valuable to just put 1 point in here just in case you need to switch to tank some really powerful ability. Again, not sure. This tree in general, the defensive aura tree, it's mainly a bunch of utility moves like a bunch of auras that in the right context it might make sense to switch to it, but nothing that you want to have up all the time. So generally speaking, it's not going to be something I'm going to be focusing on point wise. Next is offensive auras. This is pretty straightforward for this class in that it's pretty much just straight down here. So sometimes people go into Holy Fire for the first few levels of the Zealot build, just because it's just do damage around you, do more damage. It's very straightforward, and Zealots kind of take a while to set up because their main skill is way down here, their main aura that is. But I'm going to avoid doing that just because I don't really want to respec around too much. Besides that, none of these are super relevant. Conviction's cool if you're in a party and you need to help other people by just lowering resistances and whatnot, but this is a physical based build and the defense usually isn't worth the reduction because there's better ways to boost your damage, which is this tree. So put 1 point in might just early on, it just gives you more damage, which is always nice. I'm not doing anything in the right click right now, so hurrah, extra damage. I'm only going to put 1 point in it because I'm just using it as prerequisite. Next there's Blessed Aim, which increases your attack rating to allow you to hit better. There is Concentration, which makes your attacks do more damage and you have a chance to be uninterruptible while you're attacking, which is generally, there's a hit recovery concept in this game where if you get hit you flinch, so this kind of just makes you impossible to be flinched, essentially. All these I'm just putting 1 point into to get to the main show here, which is Fanaticism, which is a really great buff for physical damage because it increases your damage, your party's damage, your attack speed, and your attack. So pretty much all the offensive stats you want, all on this aura. So this is the main aura, battle aura you're going to be using, just because it makes everything better. You hit more often, you physically hit because your chance is higher more often, you hit attack-wise more often, and you just hit harder when you do. So pretty much everything you want, it's all right there. Next is combat skills. So this is a kind of a mixed bag. You kind of have to go to a lot of them because of prerequisites, but the general concept is here's Sacrifice. Sacrifice is a prerequisite for Zeal, which is the main skill, but it also is a synergy bonus. You can see here it increases the damage of Zeal, which most people argue that it's better to actually max Sacrifice instead of Zeal, at the start at least, because as Zeal levels up it gets more damage and a bit more attack bonus, but a lot of people say that the extra damage is better than the lower amount you get for Zeal and the attack bonus. So there's a bit of playing around here to figure out what you want best if you want to make sure you can hit more, which isn't always super helpful. It's kind of weird how the attack rating system works in that you don't really know how much is enough until you feel like you're missing too much. So in any case, it's a prerequisite. You're probably going to put some amount of points into it, if not max it early. Next is Zeal, which is the main ability of Zealot, obviously, in that essentially you just start swinging very quickly and you hit multiple people around you. Not like a cleave effect. It queues up a bunch of attacks and goes through them really quickly, and it can target anyone nearby you essentially. As you level it up, I think once it's 4 or 5, you get the maximum amount of hits, which is 5. And you can see the ability doesn't cost very much at 2 mana, so that's also a reason why we're not very mana intensive. And you get an extra bonus to attack and damage. So overall, it's just a great combat boost. You do more damage, you attack faster, you hit more often. So again, similar to Fanaticism, it's all about just maximizing your overall physical damage. So you're always going to want to put a few hard points into here just to get up to the max hits. But then there's that concept I mentioned earlier about whether or not you want to max Zeal or max Sacrifice first. Eventually you'll probably want to max both if you're doing like a really high level character. I'm not sure how this character will wind up, but generally speaking, it's good to have a few points, if not a lot of points. What else? Vengeance here. This is helpful in the later difficulties. It's sometimes nice to just have 1 point in Vengeance, because you'll run into mobs that are immune to physical damage, which is most of your damage. So this can just be a good way to convert your physical into non-physical elemental damage and just get rid of those physical immunities. In normal, it's not super relevant, so I don't know if I'll put a point into it yet, but I might just do it in case I take my character further. I'm not quite sure yet. Okay. Next there's Smite, which is a really strong skill. It's actually one of the main ways you can kill big bosses at the end, in that you can crushing blow them to death. But this isn't really about the build. I'm probably not going to use it very often, but it is relevant to mention that you do have access to it. Like I said, it's not going to be super relevant here, but Smite is a really good skill. Smiters are a very powerful Paladin build, mainly for killing bosses. But for this, it's mainly just a prerequisite. Speaking of prerequisites, we have Holy Bolt and Blessed Hammer. Now, Holy Bolt's not a very often used skill. There is a very, very niche Paladin build called the Medic, but not many people do it because it's a very team-focused build. It's Diablo 2, that is not a very support-focused game. Usually everyone has to do their own damage, either through summons or direct damage. So having someone who can heal their allies is kind of a weird concept. So I'm not going to say it's completely useless. It's very niche and not for this build. Blessed Hammer is a very powerful skill. It's a very popular skill build is the Hammered In. This is not the Hammered In though, so we're only putting 1 point into it to get to Holy Shield. Here's Charge, which is actually an interesting ability. It's a prerequisite to get to Holy Shield, but the charge effect could actually be useful if you need to get out, like if you're surrounded or you just need to run faster. Sometimes it makes sense to actually have charge to just start sprinting out of the way. You can use it as like a dash. I'm not sure how often that'll come up really in this playthrough, but it's something to keep in mind. Chargers are a type of Paladin, but generally it's like a quirky PvP thing. It's not always a PvE strategy. I'm not going to comment too much on it. I didn't make very many Chargers. But all these points are leading up to Holy Shield, which is a really, really important skill for almost all Paladins, but especially for heavy physical ones like this, melee ones. It does a lot of stuff, as you can see, but the main points it does for this build is it increases your defense and it increases your chance to block. Another thing that it does do that it doesn't really mention here is it makes your block frames go way down. So like when you actually block, you kind of get like mini stunned when you block, and every class has a different window for it. But Holy Shield essentially makes you almost at the very shortest, I think it's 1 frame or something, so it actually means while you're blocking more, you're not actually just perma-stunned, which is actually something certain classes like Amazons can get themselves stuck into. It's just a giant loop of mini-stunning themselves to dodge attacks. But the main general point here is you get more defense, you block more, you're not stuck blocking forever. Super good. You want to put at least a few points in here because the chance to block increases by multiple percentages for I think the first 5 levels or so. So usually it's good to put a few points in. From there, you could argue it's better to put points in Defiance, which is what I mentioned earlier, which is that defensive aura, because it can be helpful to just get more defense instead of 1, 2, 3% extra chance to block at that point. But that's, again, these are all like luxury. Oh, once I'm level 50, 60, 70, how am I going to divide my points? So that's something you can look into yourself if you're doing a multiplayer character. Again, since this is a self-found character who might just go through normal once, I'm not sure how much all these nuances are super relevant, but we'll see, and we'll see how the character pans out. But that's the general idea here. I hope that wasn't super boring. Tried to go through it as quickly as possible. Hopefully it all makes sense. If anyone wants me to explain it again or needs any questions answered, go for it. I'll just you can ask in the comments or whatever. So back to business. back to killing people, which is what Diablo is all about. So, going to visit Bloodraven, which is connected to the Cold Plains, just a second zone here. Now, Cold Plains is connected to, I guess, 3 places. There's the Stony Field, which is where I need to go next, after this quest. There's the cave, which is like a optional area, which I might actually visit. And there's the burial grounds, which is Bloodraven herself. So you don't actually need to do Bloodraven. That's this quest. The main reward is you get oh, here it is. I guess I'll go in the cave. The main reward is you get a mercenary, which isn't super relevant because she's not super powerful, but it's nice, especially in hardcore. It's better her than me as it is. So I'm gonna do it anyways, just because I'm not in this huge rush and I want to level up. So we'll do it. I'll probably even raid the crypts and whatnot after. So just clearing out the cave here. There's nothing super relevant in here. This is just an optional area with extra guys and a bit more speed to be had. It's always good to just have an extra levels, just because that can affect your chance to hit people. Getting slowed here. One of the things that some physical characters do want is you can't be frozen, because stuff like this, where you get frozen, you're slow on both accounts. But I won't be finding anything like that anytime soon, so gonna have to suck it up for now. Alright, let's keep going. Okay, so we just leveled up. I'm gonna put more points into Dex. Again, I mentioned it in the first video, but at the start, since I don't really know where my points are going, I'm gonna probably just evenly start switching the what 5 stats I put into. So 5 into Strength, then Dex, then and so on. Just because they'll all need to be at least fairly high eventually. So these are not the crucial levels where I need to start distributing stats, so I'm just going about it evenly. So, also as far as skills are concerned, I think I've hit most of the prerequisites. I am level 5 though, so I'm probably just going to hold on to this point, because I'll need to level up Holy Bolt and Defiance. So, and you can level multiple skills in one level. Can't level the same skill multiple times, especially if it's a level 6 skill, because essentially it counts how many points you could have by the time you hit that level. So you can't like hold on to 30 points from level 1 and then once you hit level 30 just dump all your points into a level 30 skill. That's not how the game works. I guess I can start switching to prayer when I have a bit of lower health, just because I'm not using my mana for anything else. So I guess I'll just keep that option open. And here's cave level 2, which is usually a fairly small zone, so I'm just gonna duck in there. I guess I'll... Okay, let's go on to level 2. There we go. There's usually a few boss mobs down here, or at least the one. So, let's go. I'm not picking up individual gold. That's one thing that... Say what you want about Diablo 3, but it's nice to not have to pick up individual scraps of gold. Just because, like, is it really worth my time to pick up 4 coins? Going with no. Especially when I can... Oh, lightning enchanted. Need to make sure I don't burst myself to death here. There we go. Switch to prayer. Okay. Lightning enchant is one of those ones you have to make sure you don't screw up and kill yourself on, because the burst of lightning can really get you by surprise, especially when you have no resistances. Okay, so this is probably most of level 2 handled. One thing I didn't mention when I was mentioning block is your chance to block when you're running, which is like your sprint, is cut into I think a third. So sometimes it is important to toggle off running if you're about to go into a heavy fight, just because if you have to move around a bit, you don't want to accidentally lower your chance to block. I believe even if you have sprint on but you're standing still, it doesn't cut off your block, but I'm not positive. I'm fairly sure that's how it works, but don't quote me on it. I'm pretty sure I had broken boots, so I'm just gonna pick those up. Yeah. Go through the loot later. Okay, that's level 2. Had to go back to kill that guy. Okay. Not sure why I'm taking the time to kill them all, but whatever. Okay, back to the cave. So, shouldn't be too much to clear this, and then I'll go ahead towards Blood Raven, which usually isn't a very difficult fight. She has a lot of adds, but she herself isn't very threatening, so she might just take a while to kill. I'm not doing a huge amount of damage here, but besides that, we should be fine. Need to keep pushing through. You'll notice I'm not picking up a lot of equipment. That's just because, generally speaking, that actually might be better against the undead, so I'll keep that. But generally speaking, you can kind of get the gist of which items are worth gold as far as selling. So once you get a good idea for that, you just stop picking up the other equipment, which could be disappointing in that people who love to hoard equipment, you might be disappointed to learn that, oh, it's not always worth it to just pick up everything, but it helps for reducing the amount of time you have to go back and forth between the shops and actually killing people. So downtime is something you want to work on maximizing the efficiency for, so that's my feeble attempt to do so. Again, the cave that I'm in right now, don't need to go down here if you're going for any quests. There is a cave-like area you need to go in later, the underground passage, but this one's just purely for loot and XP, which, as I mentioned in the first video, I'm probably going to be taking this fairly slow, so this isn't even close to a speed run at this point, so just going along for the ride. There's Cold Crow, which is the super unique for this zone. And she is annoying because she is cold enchanted. Yay! So usually you want to draw out some of her folks here. Because getting slowed like this sucks. Ooh. This is why probably a lot of people don't go into the cave. But I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. So here we go. There sure are a lot of them. So when a mob is enchanted like that, her ads also get it to some degree, although they don't get all the effects of it. So they get the chilling basic attacks, but Cold Crow herself is going to do a Ice Nova when she dies, as an example. I'm just going to skirt around the issue here by not fighting directly. I probably could just suck it up and run into them all, but just playing it super safe here, picking off as many ads as I can. Okay, time to get at least one of them. Okay. Now the main lady herself, hopefully. Fine. Go for her friends. Be careful. Be super embarrassing to die here, so. Ooh. It hurts. So now you see the blues of missing attacks as I sit here trying to hit the one person in slow motion. Oh, that was a convenient level up. We'll say it was planned. It's all part of the plan. Okay, got another one. Let's put points into strength. Put a point into defiance. Put a point into... I actually might switch to this. Okay. Come at me. Oof. That was a lot of misses. Okay, there's the explosion I mentioned. Wanted to make sure I didn't die to it. Looks like our efforts were rewarded though with a rare drop. And a charm. Charms are always appreciated. Alright, there we go. Push through that alright. Switch to some health recovery while we kill a bunch of fallen. For those who aren't aware, the shaman resurrect these little guys, so you want to always take them out first. I'm guessing a lot of people know that, but just as a by the way. Okay, so this is most of it cleared out. I think we'll keep Defiance on here just for the extra bit of defense. Oh yeah, that's right. I found a sword. That is definitely better than the one we have right now, so welcome to the club. Guess we'll also check what this is. Greed. That's not useful. As I just mentioned, usually you don't want to be picking up gold individually, so not a super relevant charm. You can always sell it for the gold. So it looks like we cleared up all this, so I'm just gonna duck out after switching by here. Got a good amount of XP from that, so I'd say it was worth the time. I know a lot of characters want to be level 6 before they take on Blood Raven, just because it makes it a lot easier. Like summoning Necros, for example, might want their Clay Golem by level 6. Stuff like that. There's a bunch of builds that get an important thing at level 6. We're not really one of them. Defiance is nice, but not critical to our build here. So. The other unique in this area, super unique that is Bishop Bosch. He's one of the fallen shamans. Not sure if we'll run into him or not. See if we got lucky on this being burial grounds. We do indeed. So I'm going to be really methodical about this, and I'm going to circle the place first. Just take out all the extra adds. Not that these guys will aggro or anything. It's very unlikely, but just get all the extra XP because when Blood Raven dies, she kills all the adds. I don't think you get the XP for it if she does so. Can be a good idea to just make sure you kill all these zombies because it's not like they're much of a threat. So let's get all these guys. Now Blood Raven herself, she's a bow character. Shoots, I think, fire arrows and maybe a poison effect, but other than that, she's just kind of a sack of health points. So there she is. So I'm gonna, even though she summons zombies, I'm gonna take them out just so that I don't need to worry about getting surrounded. Switch on prayer for that heals per second, yo. This is Blood Raven in a nutshell here. You gotta chase after because she does not want to sit still. And just a few more swings. There we go. She really liked spears, I guess. She dropped a lot of them. So I'm gonna pick this up, and we're gonna head out. I'll probably come back to throwing knives are usually pretty good for money. Probably will come back to clear out the Crypt and Mausoleum. But until now, we come up here, we get our Archer Merc, who will probably die to Rakandashu or some other low-level mob. But until then, we have a companion, so hooray. That'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one.